Hey, I'm Ryan Peebles, founder of Core Balance Training, and this is a video on the ultimate surf warm-up for preventing lower back pain or neck pain that makes you get out of the water early. So I'm going to show you kind of 3 different sets of stretches that I do before I surf. The first is the essentials that I do every time, no matter what. The second is a couple other optional ones if I have more time or the waves aren't that good and I just want to really get warmed up real well. And the third is the extra ones that I do if the waves are really good and I want to get my body warmed up for excellent waves. The reason your lower back starts to hurt when you surf a lot is because when you're arching your lower back in the pop-up and your hip flexors are tight, it's yanking on your lumbar spine. So the stretch that we do is lengthening the hip flexors, and it's got to be an active stretch. You can't just do this kneeling hip flexor stretch and expect for it to last. So what we do is the best active stretch for the hip flexors on the planet, which is the bridge. So I get down on the floor and I just kind of relax onto the sand, breathe and relax into it, and then I'm going to bridge up. You got to use your abdominals to bridge up. So imagine the abdominals pulling your pubic bone to the sky, and then glutes coming in from the back, and you want to bridge up and maintain that abdominal connection the whole time. If you want like a detailed lesson on this, you can check out the free trial of the program. We spend 4 days learning how to do the perfect bridge. But when you're doing it the right way, it doesn't go into your lower back, it goes into the front of your hips, stretches those hip flexors. And I'll spend like a couple minutes, depending on how tight I am or how much time I spend on the computer before going surfing, to really let these kind of release and open up. I breathe into it, try to expand them. I even kind of massage them, and then I'll go into the single leg bridge. Single leg bridge is like significantly more muscle contraction of the glutes, so it has an equal and opposite amount of relaxation in the hip flexors. It's called reciprocal inhibition, and so single leg bridge is a great way to literally release the muscle and get it to inhibit and relax. And then I'll do a few single leg bridges, and then I'll actually come up and bridge maximum into basically as far as I can bridge without it going into my lower back. The best way to say it is you're trying to keep your lower back flat by engaging your abdominals, and all the extension goes into the hips. So I feel that stretch there. You really want to feel the stretch there. And the next thing I do is for the neck. So obviously the reason the neck starts to hurt when you're surfing is from paddling. You're looking up, you're extending your neck for long periods of time. That repetitive cervical extension, it does cause pain in the neck. If you can get more extension going into that thoracic spine, then less extension has to go into the neck. In paddling, you can see like some really flexible surfers that when they're paddling and they're up on their board, a lot of that extension is coming through the thoracic spine. That's really good. And then the tight surfers, they're all hunched down and they're like trying to paddle like this. It's all going into the neck. It's really stressful in the neck. So to warm up, you really just want to get mobility into the thoracic spine. I will show you what I do in my home before I go to the beach that really loosens up the thoracic spine. Okay, I'm gonna get down on the floor, the thoracic spine right on the ball, and support our head, and it's gonna be the same thing, and I can get much deeper into the segments of my thoracic spine, and going segment by segment and really trying to feel the movement go into each vertebrae. And it's really important to know where you are. We don't want to be doing this kind of mobility in the neck. This is to help the neck. It's going to help you to paddle with that motion going into your thoracic spine rather than into your neck, and it's going to allow you to stay in the water longer, which is everyone's goal. So I'll actually kind of grab onto the rock and I'll pull back and lean back away from it and let the rock pull my lat muscles and stretch them. And I'll kind of sink into one side and then I'll sink into the other side. And so I'm doing this for 2 purposes. I'm doing it to stretch my lats, and I'm also sinking down to get that thoracic spine mobility. Those are the essentials. The optional ones, if you have more time or you just want to warm up really well. So this is for the hips. The more motion that you have in your hips, the less motion that has to go into your lower back. So the joints above and below the lower back are really important. Thoracic spine and hips for taking the load off the lower back. Basically get a really wide stance. You're gonna squat down and just get over one knee and then kind of typewriter over. And some people call it a Cossack squat. And basically as you're typewritering over, you're getting rotation in your hip joints, and it really loosens up those hip joints. And then as you get warmed up, you can drop a little lower and try to stay low as you typewriter over. Get a little lower, stay low, and ultimately you want to get all the way down and be able to get all that mobility into your hips. So another optional one that I do is split stance. I'm gonna squeeze my glutes, engage my abdominals. My pubic bone is forward. The stretch is going into the hip flexor, and then I'll reach. And you have to maintain that engagement through the reach, or it'll probably go into your lower back. The hip flexor and the lats at the same time, and it does require some thoracic mobility, so it's a good way to actively or functionally train the stretches that you just did on the ground. So that's one of the other optional stretches I do. This is what I'll throw in if the waves are really good. I know I'm gonna be shortboarding most likely. This is a more dynamic stretch that you would use in preparation for top turns and bottom turns. And this will all flow. You can imagine it starts on the ground, then onto the ruck, then standing exercises into the water. So basically what I'll do is I'll go kind of wider than shoulder stance, and I'll drop down a little bit, and then I'll pretend that I'm going to do a turn, and as I do that I'm going to rotate my leg like this, and so it's hip rotation and then back down like this, okay? And you kind of digging a hole in the sand as you do it, and then you can add the opposite in, and so you get the full range of the turn, and then of course you'll do both sides. So I'm rotating that back leg, getting a stretch into the hip. It also stretches the hip flexor, and then I'll go down and do the full thing. So even though I'm a regular foot, I will do it this way just to stay symmetrical. This is kind of the goofy foot way to do the turn. Okay, so that's what I do before I go surfing, depending on how good the waves are, how much time I have, and how tight my body is. I want to emphasize that I do the essential stretches every time before I go surfing, no matter what. And that's because I've learned that I just have a better time out in the water. My body feels better, no matter how good the waves are, no matter how fast I want to get out there, it's worth it. And so I highly recommend doing the essentials every time. So hopefully that helps, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you guys all for being here. Until next time, down on the floor and connect to your core. See you next week.